Religion. 1. Boundless conceit concealed as utmost modesty. 2. Justification for regulating one's own behavior and coercing others to regulate theirs. 3. An inexhaustible mine of meaning for the mentally lazy. If there is no God, everything is permitted, said Dostoevsky. He was only half right. Because if there is a God, everything is still permitted, the perpetrators of evil never failing to secure his blessings. Today, two of the most important contemporary religions are communism and psychiatry. Each is based on the principle, proclaimed by their high priests, that human behavior is determined by scientific laws and that individuals have no free will. And each consists of the practice, zealously pursued by their leading practitioners, of systematically depriving individuals of the freedom to make uncoerced choices. God neither failed nor died, but was murdered. His killers, who have usurped his place, use as their fronts the two enterprises of the modem age whose legitimacy cannot be questioned, the state and science. Two of his assassins are Marx and Freud, one of whom characterized religion as opium, the other as a neurosis. In communist hands, religion freely professed thus becomes a dangerous drug that must be outlawed, while religion brutally enforced becomes scientific Marxism, which the whole world must embrace. In psychiatric hands, religion freely professed becomes an illness that must be cured, while religion brutally enforced becomes a scientific treatment to which the whole world must submit. Students of religion call persons who insist that the Bible or the Quran are the words of God literalists, as in the following typical statement. Al-Ash'ari, a 10th century Islamic scholar, was a literalist. He accepted literally the statements that God has hands and that he sits upon a throne. Scholars who interpret religious language figuratively are invariably called non-fundamentalistic or liberal. This is an evasion. The opposite of a literal interpretation of a text is a metaphorical interpretation of it. In scholarly discussions of religion, however, such clarity is carefully avoided. Why? Because a metaphorical interpretation of the Bible or the Quran is, in plain English, an atheistic interpretation of it. If such sacred texts are God's words only in the same sense that the stock markets speak to financial analysts, then, of course, they are not God's words at all. In which case, we may be expected to respect them as sage advice, but could not be expected to revere them as holy revelation. Academic theologians now write endless tomes on the deep metaphors of religion and the mental health professions, subtly legitimizing both. At the same time, they studiously avoid discussing the practical significance of distinguishing between interpreting religious and psychiatric symbols metaphorically or literally. By ignoring literalized metaphors, they miss the tragicomedy of life and legitimize prevailing authority. Consider, for example, the case of the evangelist Oral Roberts asking the faithful to send him $8 million, lest the Lord bring me home. This threat of predicting one's own demise by theological rather than secular, suicidal means worked on those who interpreted his message literally. To save his life, the faithful sent him $8 million. Interpreting Roberts's message metaphorically and replying in kind, one might have sent him a telegram with some such message as this: "Congratulations, now you can dine with God," or "Bon voyage, remember me to his son." Actually, even today, even in our nominally secular society, such language strikes many people as offensive and would be deemed unprintable by the editors of many newspapers and magazines. We can say that a man is a son of a bitch, or a son of a gun, or a son of God. No one interprets the first or the second phrase literally, but many so interpret the third phrase, and those who don't are disparaged or worse by those who do. The American constitutional doctrine of the separation of church and state means simply that religion and government are free and independent of one another. But freedom is a burden as well as an opportunity. In this case, the burden is that religion must manage without the support of the government, and government without the support of religion. It is not surprising, then, that this lofty principle has been under steady attack along two main fronts: taxation and psychiatry. By granting tax exemption to churches, the Internal Revenue Service functions in effect as a federal agency, legitimizing belief systems the government recognizes as religion and illegitimating as cults belief systems it does not so recognize. Mutatis mutandis, by defining membership in a religion as a manifestation of mental health and membership in a cult as a symptom of mental illness, psychiatry functions as a quasi-federal agency, legitimizing what it recognizes as a religion and illegitimating what it does not as a cult. American liberals fear the religious right as a threat to civil liberties. However, because of the Constitution, religions recognized as religions pose no real threat to our liberties, whereas religions masquerading as non-religions, especially psychiatry and therapy, do. Monotheism is the worship of a god qua power monopolist. Hence the idolization of the monopolistic power of one god, one church, one pope, one sovereign, and the contradiction and conflict between monotheism and individual liberty and responsibility. Mutatis mutandis, as monopolistic religion, is the worship of the one true God and system of worship, so monopolistic medicine is the worship of the one true idea of health and system of curing disease. We Americans now idealize and idolize the monopolistic alliance of scientific medicine and the nation-state, in the same way as people in pre-Reformation Christian nations idealized and idolized the monopolistic alliance of true faith and the state. I believe we have thus misinterpreted the nature and overestimated the degree of personal freedom and responsibility we have gained since the Enlightenment and through the scientific revolution. The Jewish God scolds and exacts revenge. The Christian God loves and forgives. But neither laughs. The Greeks and Romans had gods that laughed. For the Jew or Christian, the very idea of divine laughter is sacrilege. Why? Because, unlike the Greek and Roman deities, the Jewish and Christian gods do not truly accept man as man. The Jew must placate God, who is forever angry and whose standards of piety leave not the tiniest crack of life uninfused by his exacting demands. The Christian must please God, who treats him as ab origine sinful and whom he cannot truly please so long as he lives. Laughter, in contrast, is the ultimate expression of acceptance and approval, and solemnity, even more than scolding and punishment, the ultimate expression of disapproval and disdain. That is why comedians make us feel comfortable, and preachers uncomfortable, encouraging us, however, to feel especially worthy precisely because we feel unworthy. Persons in positions of authority and power, particularly parents, priests, and politicians, can help others become dependent on them, that is, become obedient children, or they can help them become dependent on themselves, that is, become independent adults. History teaches us that persons who make others dependent on them are worshipped, whereas those who help them become independent are disdained or ignored. So long as God is loved and Satan hated, there can be no liberation of the human spirit.